Oh, it's good to have Imola back on the F1 calendar. Hello, my name is Alex Does F1 Stuff and welcome back to a pre-race review for round number 13 for the San Marino Grand Prix around Imola. Gonna say the circuit of Imola, but then I decided just to say Imola. I think I'll just roll with that. Anyway, it is Imola. It is another new track for Formula 1. Not a brand new track though, but definitely a new track for these cars. And it should be quite interesting, especially with the slightly different racing format. Also, apologies for the lighting. My blinds, these ones here are just sort of broken. I don't know, they don't like slat like all of the other ones, and it's just a bit I mean, I could move here. That might just be better. Anyway, yes, let's move on in to the pre-race review for this, and as always we start with the Drivers' Championship update where we left off after Portugal. Lewis Hamilton 77 points clear from Valtteri Bottas, with Max Verstappen just close behind, and then another massive points gap to the midfield. Those three are in a completely different league. The midfield is led by Daniel Ricciardo, with Charles Leclerc poking his head just above Sergio Perez. Then it's the McLarens, followed by Albon as well, and in the constructors it's much the same. Mercedes leaps and bounds in front of Red Bull, who are in front of one of the tightest midfield battles actually of the past few years. So definitely look out for that midfield battle for the rest of this season. We've only got 5 rounds left, and a lot can change considering they're only covered by, I think it's like 6 points or something like that. And a lot can change in just 5 rounds with only 6 points difference. But as always, we will just take a little look at the weather ahead of this Grand Prix weekend. 10% chance of rain, 76% humidity. That's going to be quite disgusting, and 18 degrees. Then 18 degrees on the Saturday, same humidity, same precipitation, and exactly the same on Sunday. Basically, not going to rain, not even going to hype it up. There's no point, never rains in Formula 1, there's no point. It's done. It's done. It's done. So let's have a look at the tyre selection instead for this Grand Prix weekend. C2, C3 and C4, the middle range of Pirelli tyres, which, I don't know whether that's going to be a good idea because we haven't been to this track before, and like with Portimao and the other new track that we went to, Mugello, they brought the harder range of compound simply because they didn't know, so you don't know how quickly these tyres are going to degrade. So the harder range is definitely the safer option, but the softer ranges are going to aim for more interesting racing. But only time will tell whether these tyres are actually going to work and how long they will last. But with limited practice, as they've only got one practice session on the Saturday morning, an hour and a half to determine everything throughout the whole weekend. So let's move on into the reviews. Now I'm going to do this slightly differently to normal, as normally I would have a nice little paper of notes of what I would like to talk about for each driver. I'm now going to do it off the cuff and just say the first thing, literally the first thing that comes into my mind. So we start with Valtteri Bottas. Now he's had some decent races this year so far. Nothing particularly outstanding at the moment, but he definitely needs to perform in these last 5 races if he is going to stand any chance at winning next year. He seriously needs to get underneath Lewis Hamilton. It was exactly like what Rosberg did in 2015 when he went and won the last 3 or the last 4 races in a row at the end of the season. That is exactly what Bottas needs to do. He needs to start winning again and winning consistently, not just whenever Lewis has a slightly bad day. But saying that, he has had some decent form at brand new tracks. Picture Germany, picture the race just gone in, I've forgotten, Portimao, where he's done well in practices, he's done extremely well in qualifying, not quite the pole in Portimao, and then it's gone well in the race, but then he's made a small little mistake. So he does seem to do better than Lewis when it doesn't count in the races, but when it does count, Lewis is better. And next is Lewis Hamilton. He only seems to be going from strength to strength this year, and honestly that's quite surprising to me at the moment, simply because this year is one that has immense pressure on him. He's got so much external factors like the Black Lives Matter movement, etc, everything outside of Formula 1, and then he's got massive pressures inside of Formula 1 with all these records that he's got to match and living up to these expectations and the pressure from the fans, etc. So he's under the most pressure that he's probably ever been on for a Formula 1 season, and he's just excelling every single time he gets in that car, which is an absolute testament to him in some respects, that he can just hop in that car and win. Yet it doesn't matter that he's only got to beat 2 or 3 people like Lando said, he still has to go out and beat them. Like, he still has to turn up and he still has to win. They're no slouches that he is against. He's still got to win. But anyway, it is looking decent for Lewis Hamilton to wrap up the championship. There is only 1 or 2 combinations he has to win, with or without the fastest lap point. That doesn't particularly matter with Bottas, 9th or lower. So it's a little bit hard for him to win it this time out. It's probably looking likely that he's going to win it in Turkey, but Mercedes can definitely win the Constructors this time round. And then to Max Verstappen. Now Max Verstappen, if he stays at Red Bull and if Mercedes stay like they are, he is never going to win a championship, and he is going to go down as the best driver to never win a championship. In this current state of Formula 1, not going to happen, and 3rd is the best that he's going to get, with the occasional win when Mercedes slip up and the occasional 2nd whenever one of the Mercedes slips up. Which is a shame, as Max is a class driver, and do you want to say he's a class guy? That's up for debate. But we're not going to delve into that in this video. We're going to talk about Imola. Now, again, he's looking decent. He's looking on form. He's probably driving the best that he's ever driven so far. And Imola is going to be another testament to that. If he can get in between the 2 Mercedes, that's just going to boost Red Bull's morale and boost his morale as well going further into the season. But the juicier side of Red Bull, Alex Albon. Now, Imola is the race weekend in which he has to perform. This was the time frame that Christian Horner gave him, 2 races including Portimao and Imola. Portimao, he sucked, as I've discussed in all of my Portimao reviews. Imola, he needs to not suck and be 4th at best, at worst. 4th at worst. He needs to be with Verstappen this weekend. If not, that's it. His hopes of either staying in Red Bull are definitely gone, and hopes of staying in the sport are possibly gone. But honestly, I do not have any hopes in the slightest for Albon, as I have given up entirely in trying to vouch for him and say, oh, it's 1 race, it's 2 races, he'll bounce back. Nope, he hasn't. He's going to be 6th, 7th, 8th, and then in the race he's just going to and honestly probably be outside of the points. And if he's inside the points, it's only going to be 7th or 8th. And then to Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, and this has been an insane character building year for the Monegasque. He has definitely improved so much as a person and probably a lot as a driver in machinery that isn't what it was last year, in being able to extract everything he can to maximize everything. Because when you have a car that's crap, you have to maximize every single category of yourself and the setup. But when you have a car that is completely OP and a power unit that is absolutely overpowered compared to everybody else, you don't necessarily maximize everything and you don't extract everything you can, because you know you can just fall back on your ace card. But saying that, he should do well in Italy for the 3rd time. 3rd time Formula 1 is going to Italy in 1 year. I think that's the first time that's ever happened. But yeah, should be interesting, and he should perform well in front of some fans. Sebastian Vettel though, yeah, it was a bit of a tough one to watch in Portimao last week. But honestly, I think he's going to bounce back. I do have a feeling he's going to be in Q3, as he's had a lot of consistency in not being in Q3 this season so far. But this time I do think he's going to get there. But I definitely believe now the car is being built towards Leclerc and not towards Vettel, which is why he's struggling so much. As the past few years, it has been Vettel and only Vettel, whereas now this year, they know he's not staying, it's now being built around Leclerc. But I would like to see a little bit more grit and a little bit more determination, mainly to give Racing Point, formerly going to Aston Martin, something to be proud about that they're going to receive this driver. So yes, I think he's going to get into Q3, and I think he should score some decent points this time out, but he will definitely be behind Leclerc, unless Leclerc has an incident. And then we have Pierre Gasly, just signed a new deal to sign for 2021 for AlphaTauri. I think it was a 1-year deal, I'm not sure, so perhaps there could be a big movement being set up for 2022, and I don't know if I'm happy with that. yes, it's good that Gasly is staying in the sport, but no, it's bad that he's staying in the same team and staying put. But ultimately, I think now what should happen, now that Gasly is staying in AlphaTauri, pull Albon out of Red Bull, dump him in the AlphaTauri against Gasly in the car that both of them clearly prefer driving, as Albon much prefers the Toro Rosso to that Red Bull. So put them both in the team and compare the two to then decide what happens with them. And then you pop someone like Perez or Hülkenberg in your Red Bull. But then that creates an issue, that actually creates an issue with what you do with them then. Because once you put Perez or Hülkenberg in, okay, that might not work. I still like the idea of putting Gasly and Albon together in the same car and seeing how they compare against each other, but we'll have to wait and see. But Danny Kvyat though, he was a bit of an interesting one in Portimao, wasn't he? Nothing really happened. Looking forward to Imola, I would say he should match Gasly, and so far, if I just pop in a card in whichever corner to my who has had the best race pace so far this season, whenever Danny has been in front of Gasly in any of the races, it has been by the same gap that Gasly has been in front of Danny, if that makes sense. So they're both like even pace whenever they're in front. It's just unfortunately Kvyat doesn't have the same results to reflect that pace. And ultimately, I don't think he's going to stay in the sport next year. It would be a bit silly if they keep him, as they need to start cycling through some more drivers and not keeping their rejects, etc, etc, etc. And the McLarens had a nice turn of pace, and especially Carlos. He's had a decent turn in luck as well, as he hasn't had the best season so far this year. His last with McLaren, and compared to 2019, last year, I went massively off camera then, but 2019 he had some very good luck, apart from the first 5 races, whereas this season he's just had not a great deal of luck in the slightest. So it's looking good, and McLaren do seem to sort of be on a little bit of an up, but not as big as they were in the opening half of the season. And then we've got Lando Norris. Now, he had a bit of a grumpy weekend, didn't he? A very grumpy weekend. He did apologise for anything that he said, whether you believe it was right or whether you believe it was wrong. He has apologised. But I don't know what's going to happen to him in Imola. He needs to bounce back, and he needs to show that he's mature and he can just drive the bloody car and just race. And I do think Q3 is 100% on the cards and 100% the aim for at least both of these McLarens. And then in the race, it should have been double points in Portimao, but due to circumstances outside of McLaren's control, it was not. So I think they're going to get double points again in Imola, as they're... what track is like Imola like? It's a little bit like Singapore, sort of, ish. Looking at the track maps, it's all like tight, twiddly bits. It's going to be interesting. Then we have the Pink Panther of Sergio Perez. Now, Sergio Perez is doing a fantastic job of advertising himself for somewhere next year, wherever the hell that is. And what's going to happen in Imola, he's going to do another exceptional job. Whether he's going to get into Q3 or not, he's definitely going to outshine Lance Stroll. As Lance Stroll, if I just pull up a picture of him, hasn't been doing the best. The past 2 races, yes, he wasn't in Germany because of COVID, which was a little bit cloudy and disclosed. Then in Portimao, he didn't really bounce back. He had a horrible practice, crashing into Verstappen. He had a horrible qualifying, had a horrible race, crashing into Norris, then retiring. And he needs to bounce back. But again, I don't think he's going to be able to, as it's only been a week. I don't know whether the fitness is going to be there. I don't know whether the mindset is going to be there. And I think Sergio Perez is going to get the best of him. Then Esteban Ocon has been doing okay the past few races, but definitely not as good as I would have wanted. I want to see him consistently doing better than Daniel Ricciardo, and I don't think that's going to happen this time out in Imola. I do think that Daniel Ricciardo is going to be able to get the better of him, as Ricciardo has definitely had the best 5 races out of the midfield team so far. Portimao was a little bit of a dippy in that list, allowing Sergio Perez to extend his lead in the last couple of races out front, but Daniel Ricciardo should end up maintaining his streak against Ocon. Then we have Kimi Räikkönen in the Alfa Romeo, and what can I say other than the old dog still has everything that he needs. That's it. He's doing exceptionally well, and he is exactly what Alfa Romeo needs. He needs to stay for next year. They need to get rid of Giovinazzi, just flush him out, then pull up a junior like Ilott, like Schumacher or whoever, put them in the car with Räikkönen for Räikkönen to mentor them and push the team forwards. That's exactly what is needed, and I'm fairly sure, given Räikkönen's performances so far this year, that is going to happen. And then speaking of Giovinazzi, he actually did the whole of Portimao with no radio, like no radio at all. So that kind of explains his sort of iffy performance, like he had nothing to go on, no change engine to XYZ or box this lap, etc, etc. There's nothing at all to go off of, but still there's nothing to shine. There's nothing to shine about this kid. So like I said with the Räikkönen segment, he needs to just disappear. He's had his 2 and a bit seasons in Formula 1, needs to disappear, loosen up a seat for a junior in which Räikkönen can then mentor, as clearly Räikkönen's mentoring for Giovinazzi hasn't quite worked, as we haven't seen any glimpses of anything, like when Charles Leclerc came into that team. Then George Russell in the Williams is doing everything he bloody possibly can to stay in the sport. Recent comments from Toto Wolff have made it seem like he's not going to be in the sport next year, saying that yes, he's 100% going to be, but then later he said it's out of Mercedes' control and it's not down to his performance. It kind of suggests that Williams are now going after Perez for the money. I don't know. I don't know. Toto Wolff has completely confused and muddied the waters, and I think that's purposeful. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with Russell. He is driving the socks off of that car compared to his teammate Nicholas Latifi, who I still can't find a decent photo of to pop in. But Latifi is another one of those drivers that has just shown zilch in terms of promise this season. And then finally we have the Haas boys with Romain Grosjean up first. Obviously, both being announced as no longer staying with the team is a little bit hurtful, and Romain Grosjean is definitely being more blunt than he ever used to be in terms of talking about the team. But Imola should be a little bit of a turning point. They hopefully should get into Q2. That's what I'm thinking. It's a positive, it's a high-end sort of goal, but I think they can do it. I think Romain Grosjean is the man to do it, as Kevin Magnussen has been on a sort of slump the past few races. I don't know what it is about him, but he's just been on a little bit of a slump. And there we go, there is my pre-race review for Imola for this weekend's Grand Prix. Join me in the next video with whatever and whenever I decide to make it. I'll see you guys then.